Today on the podcast, we have Bruce Cartwright from NeuLyf, which is spelled NeuLyf. Isn't that right, Bruce?
Yeah, and so you can say Neu Lyf as well. So for a long time when I was conceiving of what I wanted to do, I wanted to have NeuLyf in the title. And then I was at my brother's house in Brighton. We both came up with NeuLyf. And then we realized there was this double meaning, another way of pronouncing it, Neu Lyf. So I want to help people to have a whole new life and to turn over a new leaf. And so it just works really well.
And it is fitting for what it is that you do. So can you tell us a little bit about the service you offer? Bruce, I know I've mentioned it on the Facebook group and on the Instagram group about the benefit it gave me. But the problem is I couldn't describe it as well as you. So could you tell us a bit about what it is that you do?
I hope I can describe it. The tagline that I have is very similar to yours because it's mind, body, healing, because that's what I'm about. And if I had this space, as I mentioned to you already, I would have put in mind, body, spirit, or mind, body, soul. So the three aspects anyway are mind, which is kind of mental health, emotional health is what I mean by that. And for that, I use an acupressure tapping technique called FasterEFT or Eutaptics. And it's NLP based. And it's very, very good for helping people deal with emotional trauma, even very severe emotional trauma, in a very short space of time. Healing emotional trauma, which can manifest as all sorts of things: panic attacks, depression, phobias, addictions, just general kind of feelings of malaise. And it can also manifest itself as physical illness, because being under constant stress is not good for the immune system. And so then there's the body aspect of things. The primary causes of ill health and early death in the West are generally avoidable diseases, and they can be prevented with good lifestyle habits and diet. So I can teach clients the one diet that can reverse the major causes of ill health and death in the West. And so that's the body side of things. And then, Aishleen, you and I both have studied Bob Proctor courses. And it's great to be emotionally and physically healthy, but then I want to help people to lead fulfilling lives, which is the spirit side of things. I want people to be able to achieve big goals that they set for themselves. Set big goals and then achieve them. So I use Bob Proctor's techniques to help people to do that. And so those are the three aspects of what I do in a nutshell.
So Bruce, what we do here in Mind-Body-You is to try to help mums to be the best version of themselves that they can be, and to provide them with the tools that can help them if they are having any difficulties in reaching that place within themselves. And I have experienced your work and I think it's fantastic personally, based on my experience. Was there something in your life that has happened to lead you to have such a belief in the work that you do? Where did it all come about for you?
So to go back to my childhood, I guess, because I think it's relevant. I had in many senses an ideal childhood because I grew up in Zimbabwe in southern Africa, and it was a really, really amazing place to grow up, with being able to keep snakes and do taxidermy and study birds and keep fish and see wildlife. It was a privilege growing up there, but I did suffer emotional traumas as a child which affected me and which I carried into adulthood. And so throughout my 20s and even into my 30s, I was very depressed and felt that things hadn't worked out for me. And so about 5 years ago, I had relationship issues that I was going through that stressed me out, and I suffered, probably because of that, from very severe insomnia, which affected my work, which fed into more insomnia, and I just wasn't a happy person at all. And I happened to go to France to improve my French, and I was volunteering at a kind of a campsite in the foothills of the Alps, and it was a very peaceful place, and I'm not sure what it was, but my immune system must have been depressed, and I obviously had chickenpox virus that lay dormant in my facial nerve from the age of 10, which flared up, and I had a very severe right-sided facial paralysis. And so for 6 months at least, I couldn't blink my right eye. I couldn't smile, which was probably the worst thing about the condition. I couldn't play my flute, which I loved, and it was kind of a bit of a wake-up call for me. And so I went on a quest for emotional health and physical health, basically, at that time. And in the course of that, I looked at things like Qigong, which is ancient Chinese medicine, which I guess is relevant to what I did in the future after that. And then, I looked at EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization, or I don't remember what the R means, but they use it especially for post-traumatic stress for people who've come back from war zones, and it involves moving your eyes right and left while you're thinking about your traumatic event, and it seemed to be quite effective, but I thought, meh. I kept searching, and eventually I stumbled upon a YouTube channel called Healing Magic, I think, which is Robert G.Smith, to distinguish him from the rock star. Robert G.Smith's FasterEFT channel. And so what Robert Smith did was he took Gary Craig's EFT, which Gary Craig developed from a much more complex acupressure tapping technique, because that's what it is, developed by Roger Callahan. Roger Callahan developed this acupressure tapping technique called the Callahan technique, or thought field therapy, and Gary Craig bought his course for $10,000 or whatever it was, and he refined it and simplified it to create emotional freedom technique, which I think is the most well-known of this kind of family tree of tapping techniques. And then Robert Smith took Gary Craig's technique and refined it even further, made it more effective and quicker, hence his name for it, which was FasterEFT. Robert Smith bolted on, he's this crazy guy from Oklahoma, he bolted on a bunch of other techniques from aspects of a technique called Be Set Free Fast, and a whole lot of Neuro-Linguistic programming and visualization. So he created this toolbox of technique, which is kind of mostly centered around acupressure tapping for emotional trauma release. And once I saw that, I thought, that's it. And I happen to be a skeptic as well, so I watched hundreds and hundreds of YouTube videos before I decided to buy his home study course and learn the technique for myself. And it is just a fantastic technique, and I sought out other people as well. So that's the Chinese medicine thing coming into that. We have NLP, and then we have acupressure, which they're the same sort of meridian points that acupuncturists use. And then I discovered a hypnotist called David Snyder, who's again an NLP master practitioner trainer, but married to a Chinese woman who practices traditional Chinese medicine. He's a licensed acupuncturist, and also he has all sorts of other qualifications. He doesn't use acupressure points, but he uses energy. He has taken techniques from NLP, like NLP has an energy spinning kind of thing, and David Snyder has just taken that to a new level. And so I, just like Robert Smith did, I bolt on David Snyder techniques and techniques from another very well-respected American hypnotist called Stephen Parkhill, who has a book called Answer Cancer, because he has this theory that cancer can be related to emotional trauma as well. And so he deals with emotional traumas and finds that people's cancer tends to get better. I want to test this for myself, and I actually have a video that I'll be releasing in the next few days on my YouTube channel, and I'll probably link it from my website, on cancer, because what we do for cancer in our society just doesn't seem to be working. We chop pieces out of people and we pump poison into them, and still our cancer rates, depending on the cancer you'll see in my video, are way higher than places like Japan, where they just simply have a better lifestyle, they deal with stress, and they have a much better diet. And so I have a video coming out on that. The other thing about the acupressure tapping technique and the other techniques and NLP is, in case people don't know, it is basically hypnosis. And I love hypnosis because it goes directly to the subconscious mind. rather than talk therapies where people kind of expect to go and see their therapist every week for decades and perhaps make a little bit of progress here and there on their problems. Whereas with hypnosis, you can go right to the root and you can fix things in a very, very short space of time. So my business model doesn't involve having people coming back to me again and again and again. I have to go out and find new people every time, because I want people to be fixed in maybe 1 or 2 or 3 sessions. But then the other thing was the physical health. So for a year, I couldn't play my flute, and I thought, no, I need to be physically healthy. And then again, it's this cancer thing keeps coming up. I'm not sure, but it was about 5 years ago, and it may have been even prior to my facial paralysis. I had this idea. There were a couple of things that came together all at once. I grew up on farms in Africa and until I was about 13, and so I saw chickens and sheep being slaughtered, and it was just a normal part of life. But again, about 5 or 6 years ago, I ate meat, but I had this thing where I thought, I wouldn't kill these animals for myself, so why should I expect somebody else to do it for me? And I had this thing, I really think I should go vegetarian. And at the same time, I kept coming across anecdotal stories of people shrinking tumors, recovering from cancer, using a plant-based diet. And I was frustrated because I thought, what if they're lying? What if it was just a coincidence? This is all anecdote. How do I know whether this is for real? And perhaps maybe 4 or 5 months after my facial paralysis set in, the right side of my face was still completely paralyzed. I had some Seventh-day Adventist friends in a nearby town that I used to hang out with. I used to volunteer with various community things of theirs. And a guy from England who has a TED Talk, he's called Dr. Chidi Ngwaba, a Harley Street doctor of Nigerian extraction, I think. But he came over from England and was talking about a vegan, whole food, plant-based diet. And I got to have lunch with him. And so my first question to him was, I keep seeing people claiming to have cured their cancer with a plant-based diet. What's this all about? Is it real? And he said, yes, it is real. He knew Judith Plant, who was a PhD, not a medical doctor, who did several times claims to have shrunk her tumors with a plant-based diet, and he knew her personally. And so he is a holistic doctor, and what he does is, if some overweight, heart-diseased person comes into his medical practice, he will prescribe him statins and say, take these because we need to keep you alive. But then he says, we need to sort out your stress, we need to sort out your diet, we need to get you exercising. And he's not the typical doctor who says, here's a prescription for statins, you'll be taking these for the rest of your life. And probably doesn't mention all the side effects that the drugs have. And that's something that I can do even though I'm not medically trained. I can prescribe diet to people and I can help them with lifestyle changes to get physically healthy. And then just a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I had lots of goals and ambitions and I just didn't seem to be getting anywhere with them. And I decided I need a mentor. And so I happened to be invited to Dublin by some friends to go and listen to a Polish girl called Eva Pieczak, I think she's called. I'm probably butchering that. But she happened to be a Bob Proctor consultant. And I liked her, and I had lots of friends who said that she was brilliant, and I don't doubt that she is. But by strange coincidence, somehow, that was maybe middle of the week, Wednesday or something, I ended up going the Saturday of the same week up to Belfast to listen to another Bob Proctor consultant speaking, and that happened to be Kim Calvert. And I chatted with Kim after her talk and I just gelled with her and I thought, yeah, I'll choose Kim. And I made such a good choice because she is probably, out of the 1,000 or so Proctor Gallagher consultants who deliver Bob Proctor's training materials, she is probably number 1 and definitely in the top 3. And so I chose very well. And what I can offer people now is Bob's techniques and Kim's techniques for setting and achieving enormous, huge goals. and I think Aishleen, you
Yeah.
know Kim,
Mm-hmm.
and we met through her.
That's exactly right. Through her client meetups we met, and it's a 6-month program, the one that I did, and it's definitely shaped the way you think. It helps you with your goal setting. It helps you actually break down your beliefs, which has been another huge factor for me in terms of moving on forward in the direction that I wanted to go to, and same with yourself. And it really is, it's fantastic to, I think it opens up that world, doesn't it? It's a world of thinking that you never, the patterns of thinking that you had and the patterns of thinking you have after you do the course are completely different, life altering.
Exactly.
So it's definitely fantastic and would recommend it to anybody. So then, Bruce, in terms of the work that you do, and I know that this is the podcast on my end, you offer a lot of services to a lot of different people for a lot of different walks in life and a lot of different things that are affecting them in their life from a mind, body and spirit point of view. From a mum's point of view, I have seen you in relation to the bereavement, the grief that I was experiencing in relation to losing my son Ronan. And Ronan was 5 months old. I've mentioned this on my Facebook page and various other blogs and what have you. I think it was the first blog I started, which was Growing Through It, From Grief to Growth. I think that's how you actually picked up on my story and how we connected and how you let me know about your services and what it is that you do and how that could be something that would help me. We had been talking about it for a while, and we eventually did meet up around Ronan's 2nd anniversary this year, and it was a tough time for me, as you know, in the lead up to that. And anybody who experiences bereavement and grief will tell you that, you know, every day is hard, but for some reason the anniversaries, the birthdays, the Christmases, special events like that, they seem to be just that bit more difficult to deal with. And the lead up to that this year was particularly tough for me. And it was around that time that I saw you, and I experienced your EFT, Eutaptics.
FasterEFT.
FasterEFT. And I have done a video on my page, so if anybody does want to watch that, to check it out. And basically, the difference between what you were doing and a talking therapy was, in a talking therapy, which have their place, and I have got great benefit from them, and they definitely do have their place, and I've learned so much through them as well. But when I go into a talking therapy, it's almost like I need to talk about something and it needs to have certain meaning and derive meaning from it. Whereas when I was with you, I was merely able to go from A to Z in terms of this happened at this point in the journey and then this happened, and there might be very minute details that don't warrant a talking therapy conversation, but they still had a emotional impact within me. And a lot of I'd say, like, viscerally, you could feel it within your body. You could feel the tension, you could feel the memories, everything. You just talking about it, a small moment can bring you right back to the room and the events and the people and the smells and the sounds and the conversations. It just brought it all back up, and it wasn't anything that could be talked through or solved or resolved. But by talking about it with you chronologically and going, this happened and then this happened and then on this day and then I remember when this happened, I was just going through it chronologically. And throughout all of that, you're able to pause in the treatment and do whatever it is that you were doing with the meridian points or acupressure points or whatever it is as part of the FasterEFT. And you could help me with the more difficult memories, but also you bolstered and enhanced the really, really good memories, the ones that got lost sometimes because there were so many difficult memories. That was fantastic. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And I didn't feel like I was just talking as it came out. This is exactly how it happened for me, and I'm telling you the story as it unfolded. And by doing that, and having the work you did with me, it was really, really, it was a release. It was freeing. It was, how do you put it? Can't find the word for it, but it was...
Oh, cathartic, I suppose. I don't know, but yeah.
It really, really was cathartic. And you mentioned before as well that what it is you do is like hypnosis. It didn't feel like what I thought hypnosis was like. It was completely... It didn't feel like my perception of hypnosis. It felt just like a conversation with a very dear friend, and you have that way about you when you're doing your treatment. You really put people at ease and make them feel very, very comfortable in talking about things that are buried pretty deep sometimes.
Yeah, so hypnosis. Hypnosis is not this strange thing. Hypnotic trance is something that we all experience multiple times every day. Every time that we're not exactly in the present, if someone is dwelling on some kind of traumatic event that makes them feel bad in a traumatic memory, I should say, that makes them feel bad in the current moment, they're in a hypnotic trance. If you're thinking of some happy memory, like a recent holiday, you're in a trance. If you're engrossed in a novel or a movie, you're in a trance. If you're thinking about future plans, you're in a trance. And so it really is just a natural state. And hypnosis, in the same way, can be used for good, bad, and neutral purposes. And so what we do as hypnotists, NLP people, EFT, FasterEFT practitioners, is we use that hypnotic trance to heal people. And that's basically all there is to it. And then what you experienced, this is going to be hard for me to explain. I need to get a book that David Snyder talks about by a guy called Brent Baum, because I've only heard David Snyder talking about what Brent Baum talks about. It's kind of secondhand. But I think he has this theory that a traumatic event, you kind of lead up to a traumatic event, and this has to do with Stephen Parkhill's kind of theories as well. Leading up to a traumatic event, everything's fine, and then bam, something bad happens. And especially if it's extremely traumatic, or like in your case, it was 5 months and maybe even longer, I don't know if that includes the pregnancy, but like a year odd of trauma, of like a string of traumatic events. But anyway, if we consider like a single traumatic event, what happens is that event happens and then it kind of gets encapsulated and in the subconscious mind, and it's like it's there, and it just kind of persists with time, and it never goes away. And I had that with extreme grief as well, which affected me for decades. And so what we do with FasterEFT is go into those memories and kind of release them. Maybe it's a bit like lancing in a boil or an abscess or something like that. It's full of this infected pus kind of thing, and it's just letting that out and just letting everything heal. And so that's probably a good analogy for what we do. And I was going to mention previously, I mentioned things happening in my childhood. And so when I'm talking to mums, I can help mums who've been bereaved, which was your situation. I can help mums who've had a difficult childbirth. I haven't yet, but I'd like to work with mums with post-natal depression. Kind of after the fact, I can probably help them deal with bonding issues with their baby and things like that as well. That might be a result of that. And I would like to work with women who are maybe in the throes of postnatal depression to see if I can help them. I probably can. It's something that I haven't done yet, but I'm always looking for new things to work on. And then children themselves. I want to work with kids. I'm happy to work with in fact, I have an elderly lady in her 60s coming to see me tomorrow who's had a really, really tough time losing her husband and alcoholic daughter and things like that. And so I'm happy to help even elderly people who have carried trauma through their life so that they can finally have some peace. But if I can work with children who've suffered bullying, parents splitting up, relationship issues, that kind of thing, not to do what I did and carry all of that baggage into adulthood, then that would just be so rewarding. And to teach kids how to eat healthily so that they avoid the illnesses that we take for granted, and so that they can learn to set goals and achieve great things early in life instead of waiting until they're older, which is kind of what I did, then that would be great as well. So,
and I know whenever we were talking as well, you're saying that whenever you do experience a childhood trauma, it can be something like a life-changing event, such as becoming a parent, becoming a mum or dad, that can bring about those memories and those traumatic experiences again. And that was something you felt could also benefit from this particular type of treatment as well.
Yeah, because very often they do seem to be triggering events. There in NLP, there's this concept that everything is metaphor, and it's very strange. It's almost as if our lives are pieces of literature or poems or something like that, because very often they'll be triggering events, the anniversary of a traumatic event like a death, for example, but other strange things happen. A child may experience something very traumatic at 7, and then at 14 they'll experience something very similar, and at 21 something else big will happen. And so there might be a whatever period it is, cycles of things, and until, this is a Stephen Parkhill thing, you go back to the initial, what he calls an initial sensitizing event. You go and find the earliest event, which may even be in the womb. Based on Stephen Parkhill's book, I've done at least one very, very interesting regression to the womb. And it appears that we, just from what I've seen, that we have subconscious memories that go back to when we're fetuses, especially if something traumatic happens while we're still, before we're born. And I don't know where I was going with that.
In terms of the trauma can re-trigger later on in life with another event.
Yes, and so, that's what it was. The initial sensitizing event, you need to go back to. So Stephen Parkhill compares it to, you know how you might have a tin cans, like baked beans or something. You might have a pyramid of cans, but he says that what this is like is having a single can at the bottom, and then 2, and then 3, and having an upside down pyramid. And what talk therapies tend to do is they look at the symptoms on the top row of cans, and they say, well, you have depression and anxiety and panic attacks. Let's talk about all of these. And they shuffle those around and maybe take a few off, but you're still left with the pyramid. Whereas if you go back to the initial sensitizing event, which might be at 3 or 7 or 13 or 20, whatever, or even in the womb, and you take out that bottom can, the whole pyramid falls. And so that's a really, really important principle, and another difference between what I do and traditional talk therapies. So, yeah.
And obviously for me, I got great benefit from it. It was after a very difficult time, that triggering event being the anniversary of Ronan's death, and I had found it really, really difficult. Prior to that, after speaking with you, after going through the treatment with you, it really did. I felt lighter. I physically felt lighter. It was just really, really amazing. I could then look at photographs and videos and not feel the same emotional, painful memories within my body the way that I did. I could look at them and feel the joy of the moment and look back and see the positives. Oh my gosh, that's when we were able to hold Ronan. Do you remember that day? And it just seemed to have a different slant. Now, that's how I have felt since. It's only been a few months really, but I suppose the proof will be in the pudding whenever it comes to Christmas, birthdays, next year's anniversary, how I will be. But certainly for now, since then, I'm really glad to have had that experience to bring about a sense of joy and a connection with Ronan, which I always had. but it has strengthened that and brought that really to the fore, which has been lovely. So it is different. It isn't a therapy that I could easily describe, but I'm all for trying different things, and certainly having met you and gone through this treatment, it's something I've received benefit from. So I think it's important for people to keep an open mind as to what can help them. And there are multiple things that can help them, but as you said, it might help them to a degree, but maybe not to the full degree that they are needing. So always try something different if you're not getting the benefit from one, and be open-minded in terms of this. I mean, the word hypnosis can be off-putting for some people, but I'm really, really glad that it didn't have the experience like I would see in movies or anything on TV in terms of that perception of what hypnosis is. I didn't feel as though that's what it was. Although you tell me that's a big part of the technique, it wasn't that stigmatized hypnosis that I would have previously related it to. One thing that we didn't say, Bruce, we both know about NLP, but could you tell us what it actually means, just for those who don't?
So NLP, I'm not trained in NLP. It just happens that I'm a bit of an autodidact. I kind of teach myself stuff, and a part of the training for FasterEFT is to read set books on NLP. So NLP is Neuro-Linguistic programming, and it was created by a couple of guys called John Grinder and Richard Bandler. Richard Bandler seems to be the more well-known of the two. Like Bob Proctor's materials, Richard Bandler seems to have drawn on Hermetic principles, which are these 7 principles or laws of the universe, which Bob Proctor talks about as well. But basically what John Grinder and Richard Bandler did is they studied three different people who were kind of leaders of their fields, and they happened to help people with emotional issues. And the most important one to my mind was Milton Erickson, who is regarded as the father of conversational hypnotherapy. He was an amazing hypnotist, and he really, really helped people in very short spaces of time. Often a single conversation with Milton Erickson would set a person's life on a completely new course. There's a very good book called My Voice Will Go With You, I think, about Milton Erickson, which is worth a read. And then there was Virginia Satter, was a family therapist, and again, I don't know that much about her, but she also could sit a family down and sort out all their problems in a very short space of time. And then there was a third person whose name I never remember, that they studied, but they basically wanted to study these people while they were alive. They wanted to study what they did and model it so that they could teach it to other people. And so, because it's hypnosis that I practice, I'm most interested in the Milton Erickson side of things. But it's basically, NLP is basically hypnosis. And so it's using words to change people's emotional states and minds and help them overcome addictions and trauma, and basically what I do. I'm just going to segue onto something else quickly, the whole mind-body thing. It seems that using these very visceral techniques like the acupressure tapping and the energy spinning that David Snyder does, and which there are aspects of that in NLP as well, as I mentioned previously, acknowledging that the mind is the body and the body is the mind seems to be very important to that. So I think you mentioned, Aishleen, you mentioned the word visceral. Like I've been through severe grief, and I've sometimes felt when I was in the throes of that I would gladly swap the emotional pain for physical pain, because it was just unbearable. And I think it's true that, again, everything is metaphor. If you have a meeting with someone and you give them a warm cup of tea or a hot cup of tea to drink, their feelings towards you will be warmer than if you give them a cold drink, for example. And I think also there have been studies that show that when we feel emotional pain, which we often describe in physical terms, the same areas that would light up if we felt physical pain, kind of light up in our brains or activated. And so with the acupressure points, each one of them represents an internal organ. So, and everybody's different. Somebody will say, well, I'm feeling afraid and I feel it in my chest. And somebody else might say, I'm feeling afraid and I feel it in my stomach. But something to do with the tapping seems to maybe break that connection between the emotion and how it manifests in the body. You know, I don't know exactly how it works, but it really does seem to help to kind of release that bad feeling, whatever it is.
Well, I mean, I suppose you look at it, I don't really know how this computer works. I don't know how the Wi-Fi works, but it works. And I'm glad it works. So I don't need to know the ins and outs of how or why. Someone does.
Yes.
It works for me. And so I think sometimes we can get very caught up in, well, how can that work? How does that work? But, you know, so long as it's having some effect, it's worth exploring, isn't it?
Yes. And like I say, even I don't know exactly how and why it works. I do have an understanding. So if you go to my website, you can see a couple of sessions. I think I have 2 sessions with my friend Vicky there, and you can kind of watch it working. And there's a lot more going on that you might not see if you don't know what's going on, reasons why I would use certain phrases and words and things like that. But it is like a technology. There's a university professor, I don't even know what his subject is, but he's really interesting. He's half Persian, half Irish, I think, and I think he's at some university in New York, a guy called Jason Reza Georgiani, and he talks about technology in its original sense, and I'm trying to think, technology has a Greek root, but in its original sense it encompassed a lot more than physical systems. And so he talks about things like, I guess, what I do as a form of technology, perhaps things like telepathy, which people like Rupert Sheldrake have done very good experiments on and proven that dogs, for example, are telepathic, and they really do know when their owners are coming back, even if it's at an irregular time in a strange car, because he's set up cameras and he's shown that it's just certain that dogs at least can be telepathic.
Tuned into
and
something
I think humans as well.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, there are these technologies that involve the mind.
Yeah. And then if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, Bruce, can they do this over the phone? What sort of preliminary consultation would you do?
Yeah, so I have a website which is NeuLyf.com with that odd spelling. I have a Facebook page, I have Twitter, I have Instagram, but I guess Facebook's the main way to keep abreast of things that I'll be doing. I'm planning to do a bunch of seminars and things like that as well that people can attend. And on my website, there's a contact form and there's an appointment booking button that's probably on various pages that you can click on. And through that, you can schedule a half-hour free consultation with me and pick my brains, ask me anything you'd like. And we can establish during that time whether we want to do further work together. I'll help you as much as I can in that half hour. Sometimes it's all that people need. And then we can go on and book a session if necessary, or 2. Sometimes a follow-up session is advisable. People who want success coaching, life coaching, maybe a few more sessions would be in order just to get you going. So that's it, basically. So you can contact me through Facebook on my website, and my phone number's on the website as well. And then I can do phone consultations. I prefer to be able to see the other person so that I can see body language. Until this year, really, I did mostly Skype sessions with people. And because of that, I can do international sessions as well, just as long as we have a time zone that suits both of us. But then this year, I've really been enjoying doing in-person sessions as well. So I live in Northern Ireland, like you do, Aishleen, quite close to the border with the Republic as well. So people from Belfast and Dublin can get to me if they want an in-person session. But yeah, Skype or even phone are possible as well.
Yeah. And then YouTube, Bruce, have you got a YouTube channel as well?
Yes, I do. I think I sent you the link, which is just this long ugly link, but I think if you search for Neu Lyf on YouTube, you'll find me. And certainly if you go to my website and look at the bottom, you'll see there are links at the bottom to YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, and so you'll be able to get to my channel there. Sorry.
I'll try and link it on my end as well, if people want to check it out and see what it is you do. And thank you so much. As I say, I have talked about this say therapy treatment experience on my page, and I'm really glad to have met you and tried it. And if just to get the word out there, that if anybody wants to make contact and see if it is the right fit for them, or to just give it a go, again, be open-minded and willing to explore new things with the hope that it may be of benefit. And certainly I found benefit from it. So thank you so much, Bruce, for being on here today. And look forward to seeing you again, and really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this with you, because it really is my passion, and one of my great purposes in life is to help people to heal and just get a whole new lease on life, a new life, and turn over a new leaf and just start afresh. So
exactly. Perfect. Lovely.
So
all right.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.